Today's episode is a little different to the ones you may be used to, as we're not going to be talking to a health expert today. But I promise you'll love this episode just as much as the rest. And for the ladies listening, boy, would you feel seen and validated by some of the things you're about to listen to. Today's guest is someone who does it all. She's a lawyer, playwright, poet, and a voice for social justice. And we're going to find out just how she does it. A multi-hyphenate in her own right, our guest for today is Amanda Chong. In this episode, we'll be discussing her career, from starting a blog on menstruation to being a sex crime prosecutor to writing a play, Psycho Bitch, that sold out in 5 minutes. We also chat about how she manages everything she has on her plate and what wellness looks like to her. Please also remember to share this episode with friends and family if you're a big fan of In a Bite or Amanda's work. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Amanda, you're a lawyer, a poet, a playwright, a role model to many. If you told little Amanda that you would be doing this in your adult life, what would she say?
So it's really pretty cool that I found something from when I was 15 years old, which was essentially like a letter to myself, listing out the things that I wished or hoped to be doing as an adult. And I found it pretty recently when I was going through like quite a low point, and I think that really restored like my faith in how my life has turned out, because in that letter there were 4 things. It was, I want to write. I want to be involved in the theatre scene because I was always a drama buff. And I wanted to work in international law. So there was, like a little drawing of the UN. And I wanted to do work that would empower other people. So when I read it as like a 30-something and saw that, what like 15-year-old Amanda wanted to do had been made manifest in my life currently, I honestly just felt really blessed that the path that I took led me to this place, and it just gave me like fresh vision, right? Because very often when we're in the midst of all the drudgery of like leading our lives and like dealing with like the pressures, you can kind of lose perspective. And that it gave me the bigger perspective again, that I am so blessed to be doing what I do. So I would like to think that 15-year-old Amanda would think I am pretty cool, but I cannot, I can't guarantee that.
Well, of course you wrote yourself a letter. Gosh, that is so you. And I feel like you were ahead of the game with this whole vision board thing. Like, you did it. You did it way ahead of everyone. You just manifested in that letter to yourself. How cool is that?
Well, it was actually an exercise that we were made to do in school. So I think I have to thank my great teachers in RGS.
Oh, that's so funny. And so I'm really curious to know, when did your artistic career start? And how does this fit into the larger picture of your legal career? Because that's a lot going on. And they're 2 very different spaces, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I've always loved writing. So even when I was a kid, it was something that I did all the time. I think I started out liking to read a lot. I read a lot of like poetry books. I loved watching theatre. I was a huge musical theatre buff. My parents would take me to see a lot of musicals when I was much younger. And that was always my CCA growing up. So like in primary school, I was in drama. In secondary school, JC, drama, writing. And I think I just never stopped doing my CCAs, is one way to describe it, because, it was just something I was so passionate about. When I got to uni, I was deciding between doing law or literature. And it was honestly a really difficult decision. But ultimately, I chose to do law because I got a government scholarship that would allow me to study law overseas, right? So, and the whole idea was always like, I can pursue my love for like the literary arts outside of law. And then when I moved back to Singapore after 4 years overseas, I found that it was a time where a lot of things had changed in Singapore. It was when like Marina Bay Sands came up. It was when suddenly there were a lot of new MRT lines. And yeah, it was just like a huge change from how I remembered it, like being in secondary school and JC. And in order to kind of make sense of moving back and finding my place in Singapore, I started to write more. And then I developed like a writing community, writing friends. And that's always really helpful to keep pursuing an art form. And then eventually it led to me publishing my book in 2016. And then I stumbled into playwriting in 2021. And I just really loved it so much because I feel that while poetry is a bit more solitary and it's you like crying on your bedroom floor writing poems, at least that's how it looks like for me. Whereas, drama and theatre is you working with incredible artists who are making whatever you write even better and putting in their own artistry and imagination. And it's led me down paths where I get to work with like some of my closest friends, including Sindhura Kalidas. So she acted in the one-woman show I wrote earlier this year, Psycho Bitch, and it's just been a dream come true.
That's so nice. That's so nice that you can say that. And would you say that writing is a form of, or rather, would you say that writing is an outlet for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know whether you're into the whole enneagram thing.
Girl, oh my gosh, you just opened up a very big can of worms. This was not on my plan to speak about today. I can speak about the enneagram for hours. Okay, tell me more. Like what?
Yes.
Like, yes.
So you'll get it when I say that I'm like a 4-wing 3, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes, I would have totally guessed the 4.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I have a lot of big feelings, and I cannot just suppress them and continue leading my life. I need an outlet. I need to process them. And I find a lot of beauty and connection when something that I feel, resonates with someone else, right? Because I feel that, that is just such it's one of the beautiful things about being human, right? When something that you feel is so incredibly specific, but yet it resonates and somebody else has felt that specific way. It just makes you feel less alone in this world. And I mean, that's my whole ethos behind creating art, right? That I just want to be able to give people language to process difficult feelings and emotions. And because in my own life, I've been through, grief, loss, and it has affected me in very specific ways. And to be able to share that journey with someone else is really what I want to do as an artist.
That is so beautiful. Going back to Enneagram, I'm really curious, how did you get introduced to it?
Oh, one of my best friends is obsessed with it. Okay. So she's like done the course, she's like read the books. Okay, that's you. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I feel that I have a very rudimentary understanding of it, but I fully subscribe to it. Okay. So when I read the 4-wing 3, I'm like, this is 100% me. Like anyone who's a 4, I'm like, I get you. We get each other.
Yeah.
Is that your enneagram as well? What is your enneagram?
No. So I'm 1-wing 2.
Oh my gosh, I was feeling 2 vibes from you.
I mean, I do apologize to any of our listeners that don't know anything about the Enneagram, but it's super interesting. Go check it out. I mean, I am actually at a point where I'm looking to the science behind it because I'm the kind of person where I can do woo. I can do, like things that are a little bit more abstract. However, I still like to know like the history of it. How did it come about? The Enneagram is one thing that, I mean, you read the horoscope, you can give me anyone's horoscope and I'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of resonate with that. But with the Enneagram, it doesn't feel that way. It's a lot more specific. And what I love about it is that it doesn't box you up. It tells you that you have all these different traits or motivations, but what are stronger than the other. So yeah, I'm a super strong 1, which is like I will like justice is very important to me, and it's also very important to be right, to be a perfectionist. And that's why, I mean, before recording you were telling me about how like my videos look so perfect. It's because I need them to be that way, and if they're anything other than that, it will not like be seen by anyone's eyes.
No, but I think it's actually an incredibly useful tool. Like, I don't think it is woo or anything. Like, I'm not into horoscopes, but with Enneagram, I do feel there's a science behind it. And it actually helps you to be a better communicator. And it helps me to understand the people around me. And because it basically identifies the fears and motivations. So even at work, like, I think it's really helpful to understand yourself, but also how you can best work with other people.
100%. I did a course in the enneagram because I was living with my brother at that time, and I thought that he was just doing things on purpose to piss me off. And then when I did the course and learned about it, I realized, oh gosh, like this is nothing that he was doing on purpose to me. This is who he is, and I could understand
Mm.
his motivations, and it was life changing for me. It helped in my relationships as well. And yeah, it's anyway. I can go on talking about this, but yeah, that's fascinating that you're into that as well. But yeah, for anyone listening to this, if you want to go check it out, it's like what Amanda said, it's such a good tool to help you in your everyday life. Okay, so going back to the questions that I wanted to ask you about, when it comes to the issues that you advocate for, there are several, right? And how do you incorporate that into your work, be it in your legal career, in your writing, etc.?
Yeah, I think I really had I guess my dream first job, which was that I was a sex crimes prosecutor. And I got to do that for 5.5 years. And I've always been someone who's really feminist and really interested in people of all genders being treated equally in society, and also kind of looking at the dynamics in our society to see that even beyond superficial equality, there's so much more. There's so much more stereotypes and gendered expectations that we need to address, and so that has very naturally come into my work, both as a poet and as a playwright. So, for example, my book Professions. Well, the title itself has two different meanings, which is professions as in confessions, but also as professions as in occupations, right? And the backbone of that collection is actually a series of dramatic monologues in poem form, in the voice of an enigmatic muse, talking to different lovers or people that she's inspired, like men of different professions. So we have poems like the physicist, the astronomer, the lawyer, the writer, the playwright. And on one level, the poems are talking about or how women have been sidelined from all of these occupations and just relegated to the role of the muse. But on another level, they were all about romantic dynamics that I had experienced. And, so it operates on both like a public level as well as a private level. And, that has always been something that I've loved to explore in writing. And so when I went into playwriting, that naturally came in to the way that I explored the themes. So one of the plays that I wrote is called #Women Supporting Women. And it's on, very broadly, it's on sexual assault, and it's on the different kinds of feminisms that we have across the intersections of race, class, and generation. So that was staged by T-Works in 2022, and again in Cambridge University this year. And then I also created the play Psycho Bitch, which I wrote specifically for my friend Sindhu. And that addressed the trope of a woman who is emotional. And I think that stereotype of a psycho bitch, it's definitely something that I kind of identify with, I absolutely do, actually, where you are a type A woman and you're always trying to do things to like the best perfectionist ability. And what happens when you translate that dynamic into romantic relationships where, you aren't able to control how people react to you. That was one level of the stereotype of psycho bitch. And on the other level, there's the stereotype that when a woman is emotional, it's immediately like connected to hysteria, right? Or that she is psycho. And there's so much baggage attached to female emotionalism that we don't have when a man is emotional. And the premise of that play was actually based, so it starts out with this like type A overachieving journalist, and she shows up at her tech CEO fiance's office, all ready to give this presentation about the 4 times she cried in public in the course of a relationship, right?
And this is
to
a
prove
true
that,
story, right?
yeah, the premise is true. It was based on something that happened to me, right? And nobody asked me to make any kind of slide deck or presentation. In my case, I actually wrote 30 pages of submissions.
30.
Because I'm a lawyer. Yeah.
Oh my
And it was
word.
insane, and it came from this it came from like, I'm a perfectionist, I cannot lose an argument. But it
Mm-hmm.
also came from like this deep need to prove myself and to show that, yes, I'm not emotional, I'm perfectly rational. Here is an infographic of my menstrual cycle that shows like that the times I cried correlated close to my period.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny when I think back. I mean, it was such a painful time of my life, but when I thought back about it, I was like, this is so funny. Like, it just shows so much brokenness that we carry as women. And, if I can put it up on stage and make people laugh, and also like open up that conversation about why we behave in this way, then I really want to be doing that.
Okay, so where, like, can we actually find this 30-page submission anywhere?
Oh, no way. No.
Oh, no. Oh, man. That would totally be my bedtime read. That's so fascinating. And I'm so curious to know what the feedback on Psycho Bitch was. I mean, it was like tickets were sold out, you had to do reruns, people loved it. But did you have any conversations about, like the contents of it and how people felt watching it?
Yeah, I think a lot of women did feel very seen, because I guess it's a one-woman show. It goes very deep into this interior monologue that this particular character has. And it was actually an amalgamation of a lot of the experiences of women that I met, right? Like, there was a period of time when I was writing this play that wherever I went, all around the world, New York, Washington State, I'm like, tell me your psycho bitch stories. And yeah, and I saw like very common threads across cultures, across age groups. So I think it really resonated with a lot of women. I was also quite fascinated by how men reacted to it.
Yeah.
Some of them were like, no, she's not psycho at all, because they have experience with partners who have, who have cried in public. Some guys had very strong feelings that, that she had just, messed herself up, and that like, she needs to have her locus of self-validation within herself and not externally. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So it was fascinating to hear people speak, relate their own experiences to it. So I really enjoy that dynamic of creating art in Singapore, where it's a conversation that you have with the audience.
For sure. No, and I have to say that the work that you put out, it touches on so many important themes, but it's always fun, And is that something that you keep in mind? You do on purpose? Like, how does that all come about?
Yeah, I think well, when I wrote poetry, I had less room to be funny. I mean, I maybe wrote like a couple of funny poems in my life, but I felt that made me go into this like very lyrical, confessional headspace where it's really, humor doesn't really enter the picture. But I have always enjoyed, just I've enjoyed just talking and blogging and
Yeah.
just having ridiculous kinds of like analogies and metaphors and histrionics when I write. And it actually started from when I was a teenager, and I had a blog called menstruate.livejournal.com.
The live journal days. Okay.
Yeah, so, and I would just talk about my period all the time in a very dramatic, crazy way. And that has always been a way that I've enjoyed communicating. And so even in my Instagram stories, right, like basically every time I'm bored or like I'm on the loo at work and, I need to occupy myself, then I would be, posting random stuff. And then I realized that when I went into playwriting, I could bring in that humor with me. And honestly, right, like I never thought of myself as funny. So I told this to the audience who watched Psycho Bitch, that it was so cathartic for me to hear so many people laughing at the play and at the jokes in the play, because I had another ex-boyfriend who told me that I wasn't a funny person, and that when people are laughing around me, it's because they're laughing at me.
Ouch.
and not at my jokes. So I was like, oh my gosh, everyone is laughing. Oh, this is like really
Amanda,
validating.
you cannot imagine that every single time I read your stories, I am smiling or laughing. I find it incredibly entertaining in the best way possible. And please never ever stop that. Gosh, you do have a wonderful sense of humor and just so witty, you know?
Oh, thank you. I feel so validated again.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, I really appreciate it.
And it's funny that you mentioned that with poetry sometimes you can't bring humor into it. One of my favorite ones of yours, this was like a friend actually shared it with me, is Office Lady.
Oh,
That is hilarious. The line on women being like biscuits and they go lao hong.
yeah.
Oh, that was golden.
So that's probably like one of like the 4 funny poems I've ever written. And it was actually inspired by I think it was the prompt, it was for Singapore Poetry Writing Month, and the prompt was like, write a poem about your future self. That was one
Right.
prompt, and I combined the other prompt, which was write a poem that would make your mom really happy. And at that period of my time of my life, my mom was always bugging me about like, oh, maybe you should get married, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, let's like combine these two things and like write this ridiculous poem,
Oh, it's
which also,
hilarious.
yeah, and ultimately it's about skewering all those gendered expectations and stereotypes about when women need to reproduce, or when is that timeline of attractiveness for women. And that's the kind of thing that I like to respond to in my writing.
Yeah, for sure. And
Mm.
so many women can resonate with that. And on that point, I would like to know how you manage societal expectations in that realm.
Yeah, of gendered expectations, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Well, the thing is that I think like it's not that I don't feel them. I definitely do, but I don't feel like it is something within my control to be able to fulfill, right? Because I don't think that like, I mean, I know there are like stories of women who decide like now is the time for me to get married and get a partner, and then like I'm gonna like go on the apps, I'm gonna meet like 7 people a week. Like I've met these women, like who have gone on these like kinds of made it their project, made it their mission, and fully succeeded. And I
Yeah.
applaud them. That's fantastic. But I don't think it's within my capabilities. Personally, I don't. I just don't think that. I think that these sorts of things are organic. Um,
Yeah.
I think like I can't force myself to be in to like create chemistry with someone. And I'm very much in the mode of, if it's God's plan for me, if it happens, it happens. And I don't, and frankly, I'm so busy that it's
Mm-hmm.
not like, and I've gone past the stage, right, where dating is a fun activity, when
Oh
like you're in your
no.
20s and you're like, oh, it's actually fun to hang out with someone who I don't know, and oh, the possibilities, the magic behind that. I'm like, no, 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 I'm so done with that. Like, it's not fun. I would rather hang out
Now
with
it's
my
like
friends.
another meeting. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, like, no, I don't want to like have a conversation with someone I'm not sure that I would even be able to have a good conversation with. Like I would
Yeah.
much rather take that time and hang out with someone I know I totally resonate with. So I think it's like, yeah, like I don't feel, I think there's certain biological realities about being a woman,
Yeah.
right? That you have a certain window of fertility, and very often I do wish, or I do kind of think wistfully about what it would be like if I were a man, right? Because I feel like so many things would be different. I mean, frankly, like I've been called like intimidating to a lot of men, and I feel like that would not be the case if I were a man.
Yeah.
Because I don't get that from women. Like women don't call me intimidating,
Mm-hmm.
only men
Mm-hmm.
do. Yeah. So and for whatever reasons, like I feel that if I was similarly had the same kind of like CV or credentials, went to like the same schools, but I was a man, people would receive me differently, and I think that's just a reality we have to accept, right? And then I also think that that I wouldn't have this kind of like conception at the back of my mind that okay, I have X number of years where I,
Yeah.
it's possible for me to have kids, and then I would just be like focused on like living my best life and doing whatever I want to do, because at any point of time it would be possible for me to impregnate someone, right? If that
Yeah.
was what I desired. So I think we have to accept that these realities are real and that we experience them. But I do think that it actually takes, actively like setting them aside and just, yeah, I think for me, it is really like a journey of faith for me because, yeah, like I believe that, God has a plan for my life and that at the right time, the right things will happen. And, I shouldn't be panicking right now just because I don't see it happening. And it doesn't mean that there aren't things for me to do in my present, that, and I'm placed here to do things, and that's what I want to do. I want to live fully, where I am without fear of what is happening or what's not going to happen, in the
Yeah.
next like 5 years. Yeah.
That's so wise of you, and I think that would be very helpful to a lot of people listening in. I think for our generation especially, a lot of us are focusing a lot more on our careers, and I would say settling down happens at a much later age. I mean, I personally myself have been thinking about this whole, like, the biological realities
Mm-hmm.
of being a woman, and it can get really frustrating at times. But I think it's so helpful what you said, that a lot of these things are outside of our control.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like having faith, like what you said. But it's, I guess, at the same time it's frustrating because it's not like you can do anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of options for women right now, right? Like whether that's freezing your eggs. And I think everyone has to go on that very personal journey to decide whether it is an option for you or not, right? And I do
Yeah.
have friends who have decided to freeze their eggs. I do have friends who have, had kids by themselves, right? Without having a partner.
Yeah.
um, and but for me personally, I don't feel like this is something that I want to do, right? That yeah, so I think it is important to go through that process, with for yourself, to really determine, um, yeah, what options do you want to take up and what do what's not for you.
Yeah. Well, at least we have options now, right? Especially now being able to freeze our eggs, although it's not as simple, as
Yeah,
the
yeah, for
process
sure.
sounds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned earlier that you have a very busy life. Um, there is no doubt about that. How do you manage, the different aspects of your life, like your well-being, your mental health, your physical health, etc.?
Yeah, so when Charlotte first asked me whether I wanted to come on, I was like, Charlotte, you can't look at me and ask me for like wellness tips, okay? Because I'm going to be just throwing the questions back at you because I am not an ambassador for wellness. I can hear my mother laughing. I like seriously, if I told my mom like, oh, I'm in a podcast for wellness, she will just like lol for like a minute straight, okay? Because she's always telling me about how like I need to take care of myself better, etc., etc. Um, but I think, okay, so frankly, like this year I've been so busy. Like generally, like what I try to do is to optimize, as far as possible, right? Meaning that if I have to exercise, my exercise routine is going to be the most efficient one. So I'm very into HIIT
Yeah.
because it's like 25 minutes, right? You can spare 25 minutes. I say this like I've been regular at doing HIIT. I have not.
When was the last time?
No, oh my gosh, like months.
Okay, it's
So
a seasonal activity. We get it.
exactly. Okay, but when I'm in like my best state, right, then I do it like twice a week, right, and it's very optimal. Even when it comes to like skincare, I'm like into those products that do everything at once,
Mm-hmm.
right? um so so all of these things, I always tend to take the option, which is like the least resistance.
Sure.
um yeah, so what has been, so backstory about my year, right? Like it's just been very very full on at work, and I travel a lot for work. I've sometimes spent 2 to 3 weeks overseas, come back for a couple of days or a week, and then go again. And then like I had a play going on in August, so I've just not been in Singapore that much. And when you get out of Singapore, you are on a traveling schedule. A lot of the routines that you build up in your
Yeah.
regular state that just completely falls away, right? And your body is like jet lagged. Um, yeah, so I mean, it has honestly been very, very challenging, for me. But generally speaking, I like to like be kind to my body, meaning that like I eat what I feel like eating. I've never counted calories, because I just don't feel like that's going to bring me joy. And I feel so, and life is really hard and stressful as it is, and you want to like get as much joy as possible.
100%.
The other thing is, I I'm very into sleeping, even though I don't sleep that much. Um, I've, I always say that if I had a superpower, it's like not needing to sleep that much, right? And uh, I sleep maybe 5 to 6 hours on a regular day, and that's good enough for me. But then I sleep
Okay.
more on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very into like perfect sleep conditions. So I have like earplugs, this like particular brand of earplugs because I've tried so many, right? And I love like the Manta sleep mask, so it's like completely blackout. I'm very into like taking like melatonin, magnesium, glycinate, like all of those things that you see all those TikTok
Mm-hmm.
reels telling you that okay, these are the things that you need to do to get a good night's sleep. Like I am down for that.
Look,
Yeah,
you
so
you are setting yourself up for success here, like tick, 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 tick. What is the
yeah,
brand of the earplugs that you use?
this one Max Ultra Soft earplugs,
Oh
so
wow, you have
good.
a whole tub of it.
Yeah, like I've recommended it to so many people. Like I am the kind of go-to person if you have like you need to find like things paraphernalia associated with sleep.
Uh-huh.
You come to me like amongst my friends group. But this one is so good because I actually first tried it in an Airbnb in Vietnam. I think it was Ho Chi Minh City, and terrible street noise. The moment I put this in my ears, absolute silence, and I had the best sleep ever. And it's not expensive. You can get it on Amazon, and you get this giant tub, right? And you use it forever. So yeah,
Amazing.
it's great.
Okay, wow. Okay, so it's an eye mask, earplugs,
Yeah,
and then the supplements.
yeah. No, and I use lavender essential oil as well, which I
Oh,
put on my
I love that.
temples.
Okay, well there
Yeah,
you go.
so
Like, look, that's like your whole well-being recipe right there for sleep.
yeah, because I need to sleep well, and there have been times in my life when I have just struggled with sleep, right? And the thing is that we treat our bodies like computers, or at least I do, right? Where it's like I'll be working late at night because I am more productive at night. you know, there's this whole thing about chronotypes, which I absolutely believe is true, right? Where there's certain people who are just more functional in the morning. And those people, are like optimized for living in society today. um, but there are people like me who, if I back in like the caveman era, I was probably meant to be like some sort of like night warden, guarding the cave from predators at night because I am just so productive at night. And in all respects, like both in the
Mhm.
legal respect, but also in terms of creative work, right? So all my plays I've written on all nighters. So if I tried
Wow.
to be a functional human being and just operated within like the 9 to 6 p.m. of productivity, I wouldn't have done, I want to say, three-quarters of the things I've done in my life because that's just not the way I'm wired, right? And I think like very often we try to like, oh, I have to be a morning person, like I have
Yeah.
to like um be like Obama and get up at 5 a.m. and run. And that's just like the model of what a productive, optimized person is. But I think we need to just allow our bodies to do their natural thing, right? And if my chronotype is at night, then um, I'll just organize my life such that, I can work late into the night. Um, but then the difficulty there is that, as I said, like thinking my body's a computer. So when I'm done working, I'm like, okay, now shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, it doesn't work that way. And so that's why, like, I have a routine to kind of ease myself into shutting down, which involves, showering, doing the skincare, keeping yourself moisturized, right? And then doing the whole like lavender oil,
Yeah.
putting my eye shades on, reading.
That's so
So all of that is
important.
shutting down.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I do that too. I would just, shut the computer, go straight to bed, and I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to sleep. And my mind's just racing. And
Yeah.
I dream a lot at night, and I think that's just
Mhm.
my brain like slowly shutting down, going, okay, let's just close all these tabs, you know. Yeah, no, so I like that reminder that we really do need that routine before sleep.
Yeah, no, when you were talking about the tabs, right? I was just like looking at my like 40 tabs that are open right now. And I feel like that's a perfect metaphor for my
Yes.
brain, because I'm always thinking about 10,000 different things at any one time, and shutting that down is gonna take a certain amount of time. You can't just expect everything to be like control alternate delete, right?
Yes. Oh, I wish I could
Yeah.
do that. Oh my goodness. Just save all these bookmarks and close it, and I'll open it another day, but it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so sleep is a big part of, your personal well-being. And you said when it comes to your eating lifestyle, it's just listening to your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Have
because
you
I
ever
love
had
food.
any Oh, yeah, absolutely. Me too. Have you ever had any struggles with your eating lifestyle or your diet and anything like that? Especially, you grew up in a girls' school, and I can imagine what that was like back in the 90s as well.
Yeah. Actually, I always had like a pretty healthy relationship with food. So that wasn't something that I struggled with. Like in fact, um yeah, like I think it was only like later in life when I my metabolism started slowing, and then I was just like, oh, okay, like now I get why there's there's all this kind of like hang-ups about what I can eat or what I can't eat, right? Like but I have seen people struggle a lot with food. Um yeah, so it's but at the same time I also feel that it's such a one of those pleasures in life, right? And so that's why I don't want to deprive myself of anything. And yeah, and I also just tend to eat when I'm hungry, right? And I'm not sure,
Right.
you need to tell me from a nutritionist perspective whether this is good or not. But if I'm not hungry, like I'm not gonna like eat that much, right? And I sometimes my mom is like, oh, you might give yourself gastric if you don't eat regular meals. But I'm like, if I'm really not hungry, like, why do I need to abide by the conventions of having 3 meals a day, right?
Fair enough. I really like that approach, and that this is something that I also, advocate for, which is to listen to your body. As babies, we are really good when, at saying no, like I'm done. A baby cries or pushes away the spoon when they're full. And I feel that
Mm-hmm,
as adults, we forget to like we forget how to listen to our hunger and fullness cues. And it's almost
mm-hmm.
as if, oh, it's 12, it's time to eat. But how's your body actually feeling? So I like that you're very in tune with that. I would say maybe the only thing to think about is the types of foods that you're eating, because if you're not eating as often, you would have to prioritize eating nutrient dense foods so that you're
Mm-hmm.
meeting your daily requirements. Um,
What is
and
a
what
nutrient dense food? What's an example?
So, for example,
It's like brand's essence of chicken.
no, 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 not not
Nutrient
not
dense.
exactly. So, for example, if you are having a snack, you want to have something that has protein,
Like nuts.
and like some nuts or some Greek yogurt.
Mm-hmm,
That will also, that will keep you full. Adding some fruits in there so that you get your antioxidants, your vitamins, your minerals, vegetables, that sort of thing, rather than snacking on maybe crackers and
okay,
peanut
okay.
butter, for example.
So I'm very into Greek yogurt with
Oh,
like
perfect.
granola and everything. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
somehow I have done the
Yes.
Charlotte thing.
No, for sure. Greek yogurt is actually one of my favorite go-tos in terms of like snacks or like a quick meal. But also going back to something you said earlier about your metabolism slowing down. So a fun
Hmm.
fact for everyone listening to this is that your metabolism doesn't slow down
Does it
until
not?
it
Okay.
doesn't as a woman until about your 60s or when you start menopausing.
Okay,
So
then
there's
what
this
is it that I'm experiencing, Charlotte?
Exactly. So there's this huge misconception, but it's because when we enter, well, I wouldn't say adulthood, but our careers, we're not moving as much. And it's because
Hmm.
of I mean, we've all heard the whole calories in, calories out thing. It's a very,
Yeah,
very basic
yeah.
way of like explaining it. But essentially, we're not expending as much energy, but we're eating just as much. So it's not that our metabolism is slow, but we're just not as active as before.
But okay, so can I I'm sure the science is right, but I just need to tell you anecdotally like what I
Mm-hmm.
experienced, and then you can kind of like tell me what is up, right? But when I was in school, in secondary school, like I ate so much. Like I would literally have mee rebus and mee siam and potentially even a third main for my recess. Like, in fact, people used to gather around me to watch me eat because they just thought this is ridiculous. Like, how is this girl just like, and I eat really fast. Like, in fact, I was very into, I think one of my careers, potential careers would have been competitive eating. Because
No
like even,
way.
I was on a Japanese reality TV show before. It had nothing to do with eating. It was about the environment and conservation, and I was a
Okay.
teenager, and there was this Japanese guy, and we had like a competition on who could finish the entire bento fastest, right? And I was competing with this guy who's like 16, I'm 14, and like I can't remember whether I'm pretty sure like I put up a very good fight considering like I was like smaller than him. Okay, so I'm very into like eating quickly, um, and that was, and I would just eat whatever I wanted, right? And I never really deliberately exercised.
Mm,
I was in all these art CCAs. I'm sure we pranced around a lot, but it's not like we ran or like did
right.
anything super physical, right? And then I started working out at the age of 27, okay? Because before that,
Okay.
I was not into the gym. But then
Wow.
27, I went through like this really bad breakup, and I needed to find something that I could do, which blanked out my mind because I have so many thoughts. We talked about the 40
Mm-hmm.
tabs, right? And I realized that when I'm doing something that requires a lot of physical exertion, I can't do anything except focus on it because I'm not gifted in like athletics. So my entire brain power is concentrated on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and despite all of this exercising, right, I feel that now I can't eat as much as I want without feeling more conscious that I'm putting on weight. And I certainly, I used to be very skinny, and then I, I've just, my clothes sizes have gone up, right? I mean, and that's just like, to me, I feel like, okay, this is just normal. I'm a woman, right? But like, if that's not associated with metabolism, then what are we looking at?
It could be a number of factors. I think also genetic makeup is really important here.
Yeah,
And as women, I mean, like you, as a kid, I was stick thin, and then suddenly I'm like, ugh, like why do I now have hips? Like why do I now have these like like love handles that were never there? And that's also partly biological, like preparing us for motherhood.
childbirth.
Yes, exactly. But a lot of it really boils down to movement. Yeah,
Right.
at the end of the day.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
one of my biggest secrets, exposing for the first time. So when I don't, I mean, I love walking. I'm a big walker.
Yeah.
I'm that weirdo that will walk in Singapore. Like if I know, I can take the train like for 2 stops, I'll be like, nah, I will walk it in this heat with my heavy, bag, because I love walking, and I think that really contributes to like the energy that I expend. And it's these
Right.
little micro movements. Okay, I mean it's not so micro, but incidental movements that will help expend the energy and sort of like
Yeah.
balance things out, so you're not like putting on weight per se.
Yeah. No, I kind of see that because I can think of like, when you're in school, there's so much more incidental walking and moving that you do, even if you're not like in a sports CCA, right? Like, whereas, when you're a regular office worker, like I just
Yeah.
show up in the office, I sit in my chair, and then I leave at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and there is nothing that happens
Yeah,
in terms
it's
of
really
physical
tough.
activity. Yeah.
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 Have you ever thought of like, I don't know, I think now the trend is to get like walking treadmills
Yeah.
like under the
Yeah.
desk. I don't know. I can't multitask when I work, so that will not work for me. But have you ever thought of anything like that?
So I do have a standing desk, which I also have heard many like health reasons to have a standing desk. But
Mm-hmm.
shameful secret is I never stood up and used my desk, and it's so
Really?
ridiculous. Yeah, because I have one in my office and at home as well, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to get a standing desk, and I have never used it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's just one
Yeah,
of those things. It sounds good on paper, but in
yeah.
reality, like, Fair enough.
Yeah. But
Well, there you go.
I would add something, right? Which, since we're talking about diet and everything, which I realized that there's a huge disparity in my diet, or in like what I feel like eating, or my hunger levels, depending on my menstrual cycle.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So leading up to your period, you would actually need more energy. So round about 300 calories. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, would say like, oh, I feel like, I'm eating more before my period, or I'm craving chocolates and this and that. And I really, really want to tell all women out there that this is completely normal. Like your body actually
Mm.
needs more during this time. So don't beat yourself up if you're eating more, because your body actually needs it, and it is
Mm-hmm.
about 300 calories, which is, it's not little,
Mm-hmm.
so that's, yeah, it's completely normal. It's not something to fix.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for validating that for all of us, because in the span of my menstrual cycle, like I can vary. My weight can be a difference of like 2 kilos. And that's
yeah,
why I don't really bother weighing myself, because I'm like, it's always going to be within this certain range, depending on
yeah,
where I am in my menstrual cycle and how hungry I am.
yeah.
Yeah. So.
But it's so good that you're so well tuned into that. Almost like, oh yeah, it's that period. This makes sense. It makes sense that I'm eating more. I even have like a set of clothes that I go to when I'm at a certain time in my period, because I'm like, yep, this is bloating season.
Mm,
I'm all,
yeah.
if you see me in my flowy clothes, you know what's up. Like nothing is hugging my torso.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I'm 100% with you on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And I
it's
and
so
I think it
important.
yeah, and
You go.
I mean, not just in terms of diet, right? But I feel that in terms of your emotions, there are certain changes that I observe in myself, when in the lead up to my period, that just being aware of it makes you feel much more sane. When you are like just so
Yes.
emotional about everything, or the day before my period, I will always have difficulty sleeping, and I could have done
Ah,
everything right, but it will just be just before my period. And I've heard that this is a PMS symptom for some women, um, and that's why I'm very into like everything about periods, because I feel that it affects women in so many ways, bodily, emotionally, and we just have to be more aware of these things, because it just helps us feel that we're not insane.
yeah, yeah. It's that validation that you totally need. And it's so important for partners to know this as well. But also, this brings me to the next point, which is your period care reviews on Instagram that I love. You've done everything from like cooling pads, which I didn't know existed, koala bear shaped pads, these like heating packs. Like, walk me through the entire, journey of doing these reviews. And where are you
Yeah.
now?
So for me, like I have always been very into my period, right? Simply because I have very, very bad menstrual cramps, and till today, like apparently there's nothing wrong with any of my lady bits, because I've done the whole gynae thing, done every single kind of possible check,
Yeah.
you know, we can do. Um, and I know a lot of women who have gone through this journey, um, and there just aren't enough resources out there. And for me, when I was a teenager, I used to get terrible cramps and like really, really heavy flow, and it would mean that I had to skip school, right? Like I would actually have to just go to the sick bay and lie down, because like I just could not continue. And I always felt that like there was this kind of idea that like this is not a proper excuse, or you feel bad about it, like this is not really a medical reason. I don't know why we had like it's just not valid. Like
Yeah.
and maybe it's because we don't talk about it enough. And when I went to JC, I realized that like some of my male classmates, they had like all of these like strange ideas about periods. For example, I told one of them, I was like, here, I think I'm having my period. And then like I went to the bathroom and I came out, and he was like, oh, so you're done with your period now? And I was like, no, dude, it's not like, going to like lay an egg or something.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. And this is like in, JC, right? And you're 17, 18, you definitely should know more. Um, and I mean, some of them even thought that was just one day, meaning that, you learn in bio, right? 28 days. And then, so
Yeah.
they think that the period is one day and then the cycle starts again, right?
Oh boy.
And,
I
and that's
wish.
like, yeah, me too. And that's when I decided to start my blog, menstruate.livejournal.com, which does not exist, so don't try to look for it,
Oh
anyone,
man.
because it's so embarrassing. But basically, I would just talk very, very frankly about my period problems, right? Which includes getting my period in the middle of a 3-hour math prelim. And because I have such terrible cramps and heavy flow, I basically described it as by the time I stood up after the 3-hour exam, on the on the back of my uniform, my skirt, it was like the atlas of an apocalyptic world.
Oh.
And like someone behind me had to lend me a hoodie to tie around my waist, and then I had to go home and take all my pills because I had all these painkillers, and sit another 3-hour exam in the afternoon.
Oh
Yeah.
my.
And it's always just been like just very full on, very intense. And I just felt like, okay, I want people to know how hard it can be, and hence I had this blog, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's always just been my kind of way of talking about periods, like even amongst my friends, um, in my writing. And then when it got to the pandemic and I was just cooped up at home and not having any social interaction like the rest of us, I just thought like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try all these fancy pads and see what's up, right? And that just became my way of alleviating pandemic boredom. And yeah, and like kind of I learned so much. And one of my friends made me like she hand sewed pads for me, reusable
No.
pads. Yeah,
Wow.
like she just asked me like, hey, what is your like preferred size? And I was like, oh, I need the pad that is like bigger than my face,
Super long.
Yeah. Like the kind that is like
The
almost
grandma
could be a
ones, yeah.
diaper. Yeah,
Yes,
like
yes,
I need
yes.
that. And she just made it for me. And I love that, because I only use pads because I don't want to like deal with so
Sure.
much drama,
Mm-hmm.
And I have very bad cramps. So I feel like, okay, there's already one main character in the story.
Yeah, you
I'm not
don't
gonna
really
like
want to.
insert
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
cup or anything. I mean, I know friends who have said that this is absolute game changer, but for me, I'm like, I can only focus on one thing. I'm not a
Yes.
multitasker.
Yeah.
And so I've since discovered like there's so many wonderful like sustainable solutions for people who prefer um, pads, or like
Mm-hmm.
that you have
Like
reusable
period
pads.
underwear.
Yeah, the period underwear
Yeah.
is
I
so
love those.
fantastic. I use the Arizona
Yes.
one.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
really, really good.
That's from Uniqlo, right?
Yeah, the Uniqlo
Okay.
Arizona period underwear.
I
Yeah.
use I haven't tried that one, but I use this. It's a local brand. It's called Moon Cheeks. And what I really like about it is that they actually look pretty, because a lot of period underwear is just like some black thing and it looks very like boring. But this one has like a nice little lace. And then I wear one at night. It's such a grandma like panty situation, but
Yeah.
it's so comfortable and you feel so safe in it.
Yeah.
I love period underwear.
Yeah, me too. And well, now as a woman in my 30s, the other ancillary benefit of period underwear that I really appreciate is that it's kind of like control underwear, because it cuts quite high.
Yes,
And
yes,
like,
yes, you're right.
when you get like very bad bloating, and it just, I mean, it doesn't cinch you in an uncomfortable way, but it kind of like just keeps things like, oh, okay, they're in
Yeah.
the general shape.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. It keeps it together.
yeah, and the Uniqlo one, the reason why I really like it is because it's also seamless, right? And I need that when I'm wearing like my office
Okay.
clothes.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Oh wow, so many good tips. And what's your go-to pad? And wow, this is not a question you hear every day on every podcast, but yes, what is your go-to
Oh,
pad?
okay. I've always used Kotex. I'm really
Okay.
into Kotex, and the only way I can describe it is the one that is bigger than your face, lah, right? Like it's really like, if I hold it up, it's gonna be like this big.
Okay.
That's the
Wow.
one that I use at night. And actually, right, like it is pretty expensive,
Oh, it
I mean,
is.
that's
Yeah.
one thing about pads, but I'm also a fan of the cooling pads, like the ones. I had a review on it back in my pandemic period reviewing
I
days
saw
where I
that.
was
It's something
so
about like blowing.
skeptical.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something about blowing air, right?
Yes.
On your
Yeah.
lady parts. I read
Yeah.
that and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think I can handle this.
Oh, it was so good. As someone who like was skeptical at first, now I use them because especially if you're on like a long plane ride, like I feel that it increases the longevity of your pad. You know,
Okay.
like it actually makes you feel comfortable for a longer period of time, right? And if you're going to spend, okay, to me, like, okay, obviously you should change your pad whenever you need to, but you know, sometimes you just want it to last longer, right?
Yeah.
And like you don't have time to keep changing it, or if it's still comfortable, you're not going to like change it. Because I come from like a tradition of having to change my pad every hour when it's
Oh
really, really
wow.
heavy, you know?
Heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the longer I can let it like rest, the better it is for me. um yeah, so I mean, to me, I really just feel that the more we talk openly about this, the more people can understand, right? People who don't go through this experience,
Yeah.
um and we can just like build empathy, and realize that this is actually a proper health struggle, right? And
Yeah.
you know, you see all those like Instagram reels of men who are trying, they have like
Mm-hmm.
some weird device that like puts up like lets them experience the pain of a
Yeah.
period, and then they're all like freaking out, and we're like, oh, this is what we go through every month, right?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
I'm exactly the same as you. My period cramps are so debilitating. It really feels like someone is wringing my womb, like just doing this,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's so painful. But yeah, like you, I went to see my doctor, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is fine. Just some people experience it." And I remember back, like when I was working at a company or when I was in school, I felt lame that I had to say, oh, like my cramps are so bad, I need to stay home
yeah,
because
yeah,
not everyone experiences it the same. So I can imagine for someone who experiences pain like 2 out of 10 would be like, huh? Like just that pain and you're staying home. But I'm like, no, my pain is like 15 out of 10.
yeah,
And it's so
yeah.
hard to get someone to understand that.
And I just feel that again, this is one of those like things that if men experience this, there would be a concept of menstrual leave, right? It's
Yeah.
just because that a lot of the systems that we work with are structured around a history of male domination, and sometimes like all of these little things, which are actually not that little to us, like it doesn't get factored into to like the way that, yeah, like our HR systems or policies are run. And I mean, even when it comes to like taxing menstrual products, or like whether it should, the conversation of whether it should be provided free, especially maybe to students, you know, I mean, that's not even something that we are talking about in this country yet. But
Yeah,
I feel that, you know, like it is, to me, I hope that conversation goes in that direction eventually, right? That
for sure.
um yeah, because it is such, I would actually call it like a public health cost, right? That like women are facing, I mean, some women experience like great amounts of pain, or have mood related symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Um and so often we're just made to feel like, okay, this is your burden to bear, you know, like just be quiet about it, be a good worker. Yeah,
Yeah.
but then you realize that it is actually really tough, especially if the pain is like 15 out of 10 as you were describing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hopefully, we'll see a day where HR has a chart of everyone's menstrual cycle. I've taken up so much of your time, Amanda, but I have three very quick questions to ask you
Mhm.
before we go. So, one is, what is on your bucket list at the moment? What is something that you really want to do?
Hmm. Well, for me, right, I would love to take one of my plays overseas. I've been thinking about this a lot, right? And maybe even Psycho Bitch. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been thinking, you know, that would just be a very fun opportunity. And I mean, because again, the performer for Psycho Bitch is a really good friend of mine, it would be like a new adventure for us to pursue
Hmm.
together. So that's
Oh, that'd be
definitely something,
exciting.
yeah, I'm thinking about.
For sure. Well, write that down on that paper, manifest it the way you did when you were 15. The second thing is, what do you do for fun outside of what you've, spoken about today, like writing and, exploring more of the creative side of things?
Oh, I feel that all of my things, all of my hobbies are like part of my artistic career. So for me, like I really, really love reading, and I love watching plays, and seeing what other people are creating. And so that's how I spend like my fun kind of time, because I don't watch Netflix. That's like another quirk that I have. Yeah,
Okay.
like I
Totally fair.
yeah, I guess I feel that like I don't have enough time. So like I'm like, oh, I can't watch Netflix because I need to read books. But the reality is that I don't watch Netflix, but I watch a lot of TikTok and Instagram reels.
Fair enough. Look, like what you said, you're just optimizing, right? What's the most
Yeah.
efficient? So this is efficient entertainment for you.
Yeah, so I actually spend a lot of time just blanking out, which I think is very important,
For sure.
because a lot of things connect in my brain when I am blanking out, right? Like people in my family, like they'll describe it as screensaver mode, where like it looks like nothing is going on. I'm like just staring into space, but I feel like that's when I'm like looking through the tabs in my brain and trying to form connections.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
experienced that too. Like it's like the best ideas come when you're taking a shower or when you're on the toilet, right? Because
Yeah, or
you're
when you're
actually
just
not
walking.
thinking. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And the last question is, I ask all my guests this question. It is, like we all love food, and this podcast is about nutrition and food and everything under that umbrella. What is a dish that you've not had for a very long time that that you crave for? Like it brings you back to a special memory, perhaps.
Hmm. When I think it's Teochew Mui. Like
Oh,
I
my
really, really love
favorite.
Teochew Mui. And I haven't had it in a while, right? And it's like so comforting and it reminds me of being sick and a child, right? Because that's what, usually
What a memory.
yeah, no, but it's like, don't you love being sick when you were a kid, right? I mean, like, I'm not talking like anything particularly prolonged, but when you stay home from school and
Right.
you have a bad cold and then you just lie in bed and I would read books all day and then I would get like porridge. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like that's something that I don't usually eat that often. I mean, it's 100% still my
Ah.
comfort food, but I haven't had it in a while.
Okay, that's so interesting that you mentioned that because so I was in Europe living there for 5 years, and every time I came back to Singapore, the first dish I had to have was Teochew Mui, which is Teochew porridge.
Oh,
For
yeah.
for those of you listening and are not familiar with it, yeah, it's my go to food. I mean, it's nothing. I don't think it's like a Singaporean like it's not one of like our like top 10 national dishes or anything,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's
not.
so comforting. It just feels
Yeah,
like whoever the person is in the kitchen whipping this up, like they could be like it feels like they're a family member cooking for me because it's
yeah,
like home cooked
yeah,
food.
yeah. No, and I love the diversity, and yeah, how warm and comforting it is. And even
Yeah.
though you can go a bit wild and get like spicy ikan bilis, right? But like it's still
Yeah.
grounded by the Teochew Mui itself.
Yes, yes, yes. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite spot to have it?
Oh, I always go to the one in Upper Bukit Timah. Yeah,
Okay.
I can't remember the name because it's like one of those places where like you just go, it
Yeah,
by like
yeah.
where it is. Yeah, but it's like near Beauty World.
Okay, I'll go find out the address. I'll put it in the show notes for anyone who wants to check it out. But thank you so much for being on the show, Amanda. I really appreciate your time. It was so fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for like correcting so many of my misconceptions about nutrition and metabolism. So I really needed that.
Oh, that was such a great conversation. I had so much fun chatting with Amanda. And trust me when I say that I could have gone on for another whole hour. I was just very mindful of putting out an extremely long episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You learned a thing or two about Amanda, how she deals with everything on her plate, her sleep routine, how she goes about her eating lifestyle, and much, much more. As always, don't forget to rate the show so that we can keep bringing in content that you enjoy. And for more nutrition content, follow me on social media and subscribe to my weekly newsletters. All the links for that will be in the show notes. See you in the next one. For the full transcript of this episode, head over to my website, thecharlottemay.com/podcast.